So we also have Renee Williams here. We have Violet Ngobeni. And I think sorry, I'm just muting those who've arrived. So Violet is here, Renee is here. I think David Makubiane, I'm not sure if that David is indeed the David I'm thinking. But if I've left anybody out, please simply...
Yes.
Hi, David.
It's Makubiane.
Hello.
I was glad that, you know, you hadn't noticed that I was here.
No chance. Thank you, David.
And also, can I have some insight as to who's here for the DFA? Is it the board or the general membership? Or?
Just excuse me for trying to there we go. So it's myself and Mickey, who is the co-chair. We are co-chairs of the DFA. I know that Inva is on the call. We've also got many of our members here. And Desmond as well, also on the current board of the DFA. So there's quite a few. At the moment, we have quite a few people on the call. Yeah, I can't see.
Okay, good. So hello to everyone, and very nice to be having this exchange with everyone. And it's nice to hear some names I recognize and comrades in the field. So let me talk a little bit about S3, and I hope also that my colleagues Renee and Violet and David will join in. So you know, we have a mighty task at S3, and also, you know, if there's some way you want me to go, just pop the question. It's a conversation rather than a presentation. It's a tremendous task. As you know, we're in a very congested television landscape. What we're trying to do with S3 is to relaunch a brand that is for progressive millennials. And it's really looking at becoming, you know, something that you can have a conversation with about the present, what's wrong with the present, what can we do to make the present work for us, for all South Africans, what can the future look like? But at the same time, that when we're saying that we're progressive, we're also saying we're an entertainment channel, and for the sake with this channel. In other words, we have to ensure that it's sustainable and we leave it in a better place than it has been. So that being said, we obviously have challenges in terms of documentary in particular, but I don't think it's a challenge that we can't overcome. So let me just talk a little bit about our schedule, just so that you understand where we're trying to make some local factual programs. So during prime time on Wednesday, we have a 9 o'clock history drama documentary slot. And what I mean by that is that we will do mostly factual-based material, but some of it could be rendered in drama, some in documentary, and some in docudrama. What we have done in that slot at the moment is Small Axes, which is the Steve McQueen series. We're doing Enslaved, led by Samuel Jackson. Then we've also had a series called Serena, Living with Serena Williams, and that was partly to begin to profile women in sport and role modeling for women. So we were trying to really bring attention to that slot, and then to begin to build in local high-end programs in order to build a documentary strand. We have commissioned a number of already made documentaries from people, and I also must apologize that these systems take such a long time to license, to pre-sale, to And I certainly think we're going to try and turn that around a little quicker with the new operating structure now that 189 is partly over, and that we can begin to see, how to work more efficiently. So that's the sort of prime slot at the moment. Then when we look at other opportunities on the channel, at 2030, there's a half-hour slot that we also have the ability to do series and one-offs in a more sort of investigative documentary style. And it's the whole strand across 2030 is actuality, special assignment, and then docu-reality. That's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So it would be nice if we could get some cutting edge investigative series there. We could also do one-offs though, but they're half hour, and then we go into an hour documentary. Straight after the hour documentary on a Wednesday, we have natural history. We have the ability to commission a number of natural history programs. At least in the first year, we put aside for 13. So it could be series or not, but more likely to be, and this at 22:30 on a Wednesday is the repeat slot from a Sunday. So let me go to the prime slots first. And then straight after the natural history on a Wednesday is people and the environment, which again is factual programming, could be one-off documentaries or series. So let me just take you to the prime slots then. Outside of Wednesday at 2100, we're also looking at Sunday. So on Sunday at 18:30, we have Natural History Blue Chip, and it's something that's worked for the channel for a long time and continues to work. But we've put aside some money for local commissions, 18:30 to 19:30. Then we've created another slot for factual programming on a Sunday, which is 1700 to 1800, which is called People and the Environment. It's really looking at growing a more diverse audience into environmental and natural history programming. So we're looking more at people's exchanges exchanges with the environment, all sort of high-end, environmental concerns. Like, for example, the Leonardo DiCaprio film. So that's another slot that I think is useful there. If we look at Saturday and Sunday as well, we have something called Sport Arena at 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock on a Saturday. And on a Sunday, we have 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock on a Sunday is sport programming. A lot of that is taken up with live games. However, Sport and S3 will be looking at profiles of sport heroes, sport documentaries. I mean, obviously something like Icarus worked very well. We're looking at some local sport documentaries. So something, for example, when we put Serena in the 9 o'clock slot, we're also trying to build our relationship to sport and to make sure that particularly women are profiled in sport. Then I think if we also look at lifestyle, we have some opportunity there for factual programming as well. So we have a local talk, which is 5 to 5:30. At the moment, we have a show called Trending, and then another show called Unpacked, but we don't have programming for the entire year, and that's local talk. And we're trying to make that a really sort of hip and happening conversation about zeitgeist issues. And Hlongwane is much more hard-hitting conversations about people and problems and society and coming out. And so there is an opportunity there because we don't have a full slate for the year. We are also looking at introducing, and we will put out a call for it, for a high-end sort of reality/magazine show. Because Top Billing as well as Mela worked for us, we're going to look for something like that, which will be an hour slot, potentially on a Friday. We will also be putting out a brief later in the year for a probably something like a Trading Places, a local version of it, but we'll probably have, and Renee's team will be doing that. We'll be optioning a particular Trading Places franchise, and that'll go out to the industry as well. We are always looking in that strand of 5 to 6 in terms of lifestyle. We are always looking for good cooking shows, good lifestyle shows. We have something at the moment between 5:30 and 6 o'clock called The Science of Stupid. But what we really want there is more sort of, entertainment, science, environment programming. So like when you turned on to the BBC, you can always learn something, but it has to be millennial focused. It could be, around new technologies or, but it's science and environment. It's a half hour there, and we don't have a full slate of programming, and we'd like to see some local programming in that slot as well. So that's our focus in terms of factual. I mean, in terms of factual, we'd also, it's nice to also consider historical drama and docudrama, so as to push the factual realm right into entertainment and into drama audience figures. So that's it from me. Maybe Renee or the team, Violet, if I've forgotten something, please come in. And Renee. Or David as well.
Cool, thanks, Pat. So I'll just to support what Pat's saying, SABC3 or S3, that's what it's called now, is going green. And we find that a lot of the submissions that come in for S3 are generally very political, and politics is a big strand for S3, but we don't get much content in terms of going green. When the channel refers to environmental, it's also not necessarily the BBC blue chip. There are a lot of issues facing developmental countries like South Africa. In terms of the environment, it's very heavily based on socio-economic circumstances and sustainability, and we've been looking for that. And we haven't been getting much of that. And when we do get it, it's focused and targeted at the wrong audience for SABC3. And I think Pat's unpacking of Zeitgeist, a woke audience, the approach and the understanding is very broad. It's not necessarily me and myself now. It's my contribution to the world and what am I going to leave for my kids and my grandkids. And we'd really like to see an increase in that type of submissions. And it's a real good opportunity because Pat is opening up these spaces for that kind of engagement. And it doesn't need to be the classic documentary, the 1 hour or the half hour. Documentary can take on many forms these days. And that's what we're also looking for, to give the channel a distinctive edge in how they're doing their offerings. So yeah, that's kind of from my side, Pat.
Thanks, Renee. I mean, the thing that I think I can't stress enough is that, I mean, I know that at S1, and it's the only experience I can really, talk to in terms of really selling out in documentary programming. and that was things like Chavez. It was really, pertinent documentaries at the time. We also did Chris Hani, and they would get, almost not quite drama ratings, but we made a lot in advertising. So we have to focus on building that strand. I think just to mention as well that Enver's documentary went out on Sunday night and did really, really well. I think the figures were at 300,000 viewers for a documentary on a Sunday is really good. So far, we were very encouraged by that, but we were also, I think why I was so encouraged by it is because of the sort of extent of Enver's above the line, and his social media outreach, the stuff I saw in the papers, magazines. He really went out and marketed it, even, more so than I think the SABC did outside of its own platforms. In other words, radio and TV, SABC. And what I wanted to suggest is that, the DFA, in order to help us grow documentary in this way, that perhaps there's a grant that we can give, apply for the DFA that is just for marketing documentaries, so that we really, begin to have more successes with numbers coming in, because then SABC has an argument to put more money into documentary as well. So I just also wanted to say well done to Enver, but also it was fantastic for the channel. And I hope to do more of those kind of documentaries that will work and that are marketed well.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Pat and Renee. So what I just wanted to say is you're welcome to put your questions in the chat, and then also alternatively to raise your hand using the icon function. I think I just want to begin with a quick question around kind of time frames. And so after the Section 189 process is now, so the SABC has undergone quite a few retrenchments within the organization. And I'm just curious, what is the landscape at the moment? How is it looking in terms of turnaround times, teams and capacity? When can we expect to hear back from the SABC? It's great to know what to pitch and what to put forward. And so this is invaluable. But when it comes to knowing what to expect, just in terms of timeframes, what is the situation like? What can we?
So let me just talk to S3's experience, and then I think Renee and Violet and David could come in, because they're all in both, Renee in local content, and then David and Violet in international. So in terms of S3, it's been exasperating actually, because let me just explain so that the industry knows some of this, is that in the beginning, for the last year really, we couldn't really process a lot of business plans if there was a negative return on investment. So at the moment, SABC3 has a year to try and turn this around. So we can process some of our business plans, even though they might reflect a negative, in order to start growing the entire environment of the channel so that things could be more successful. So just, for you to understand is that, firstly, SABC really wants to try and turn around. And so, coming from a low base, we had very few business plans that we could really process that were really making positive returns on investment. And as you know, documentaries are not really doing that. Except, something like when we're getting those kind of numbers as on Enver's documentary. So a lot of these were delayed. That's one of the reasons. The second reason is that S3 has been operating with people acting fantastically, doing great work, but at the same time, we haven't had adequate personnel because we've been working without a full-time programming manager and a full-time assistant programming manager. And Violet's been acting there, and Jacqui Hlongwane has been acting there. But they've both got full-time jobs. So just to say that situation is going to be alleviated soon. So we hope that processes will increase and become more rapid then. I have every intent to try and serve the documentary fraternity, and against my best intent, it's just hard. And given the 189 process, there are people now that were in, receiving your proposals, and many of those people have moved and new people have come in. So there's an exchange that's occurring that has also slowed stuff down. Other than that, I want to give over to Renee in terms of local, and to Violet and David in terms of processes in their areas.
Thanks, Pat. From a 100% commission, obviously from our side, to control the flow, we've created open windows. So we're not open consistently throughout the year to accept 100% commission proposals. We opened up in November for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We opened up in November. We are processing that 554 proposals. Pitches have started. They started 3 weeks ago. And actually there's 3 of them happening as I'm sitting here now. We are planning to finish our pitches by middle of June. So that process will be closed down by middle of June. Then we will open up again for another 100% commission, probably in middle of July, where producers can submit ideas. Our pre-sales are ongoing, it's open. Many of the producers who are in this forum would know that the calling to pitches and the submitting is not the issue, it's after the pitch. And obviously that's where we're dealing with the challenges around budgeting and approvals, etc. But that should be resolved once we get the budgeting and the approval processes sorted out, as Pat has said. But we don't have mass backlog in the 100% commissions. We're trying to roll them out as soon as possible. And I think in terms of licensing, David and Vi's moved along quite a lot. David's been actively managing that process. But he is here. David?
Yes, afternoon to everyone. Thanks, Renee. Yeah, just one of the things I wanted to make this comment, I thought, when I get a chance. Also, as much as I hear we're saying, and I think Renee kind of tried to clarify that when we're saying we're going green, it's also about understanding the target audience, right? And it's a conscientious target audience, and all the issues that they go through becomes important that we provide content for that progressive millennial. The licenses, I'm going to repeat what I said in the other sessions, in case there are new people today, is that we had agreed or we had requested, because there was quite a backlog, that we take about 2 months to focus on the backlog. And then come June, we will start receiving and looking at new submissions for licenses. The team has pushed. Currently, I think according to the responses that we have, or the decisions that have been taken, the decisions might have been taken, but not yet communicated fully. The total number of unsolicited at about 169. Out of the 169, about 40 of them were sitting on SABC3. The team has managed to respond to 23 of them. And we still want to make sure that by May, we would have completed all of them. And then come June, we can then start look at new submissions. I know that the communication that was sent out might have confused some people, because we saw fresh submissions when our contacts were sent out. But I think it's very important to note that we're gonna You know, obviously it's hard not to look at something because some of the submissions might be for June, Youth Day, whatever. So, but the responses for the new submissions won't go out on unsolicited. In particular, SABC3 has been quite active in responding. So, you know, the number, as I've given you the stats, because, you know, Violet and Pat, in particular Pat, you know, looks at, evaluates and responds, and responds as quickly as possible. So with regards to the submissions that have been sent geared to the channel or for SABC3, there has been quite good engagement on unsolicited. And I think that the timelines were also shared previously. But obviously, Section 189 still has an impact on us. We don't have a licensed manager as yet. We're still going through the recruitment. So while Section 189 might have come to an end, we have a lot of gaps because we still need to fill some posts. Some people decided to take packages and so on. So, you know, we've got a number of posts that still need to be filled. For instance, as Pat mentioned, there's no program manager who needs to be actively engaging content, especially all license submissions for the channel. We don't have a program manager for SABC3. We don't have an assistant program manager. So Jacqui is acting, Violet is acting, and as I said, we don't have a license manager, and soon will be appointed. So the impact of Section 189 will still be felt until we get to a point where we've filled our positions, because as it is, the team is very stretched.
Thank you for that. Thanks so much, David and Renee. I want to put it to the attendees. If anybody has a question, now is the opportunity. So please simply raise your hand, or please just say in the chat that you'd like to ask a question. I think if I can ask, okay, Enver and then Obet. So we'll go with Enver and then Obet.
Hi everyone. Thanks for that, Pat. I just wanted to actually ask about the sports documentaries. So maybe to find out a little bit more in terms of with the sports documentaries, do we deal with S3 on that and the sports channel or team, and is that also unsolicited?
Is this Enver speaking?
Yes.
Enver, so I think that it will, I think S3, and then we will get Gary involved in co-commissioning with us. Renee, how do you see that going forward? Because we had the chat with Gary and he's kind of keen to do some sport documentaries, but we could probably do it as a co-commission, right?
Yeah, so if you guys have got licensed sport ones, then you can send it directly to Vi. She'll then process together with Gary's team, which is Ruby and Orapaleng. If it is for a commission, if it's 100% commission, Enver, you'd have to wait till I open the window, middle of July. If it's a pre-sale, you submit it the normal process through to us. And then we will evaluate it with the sports team. And I think understanding who is going to do it in terms of the SABC also depends on the type of documentary you are submitting. A documentary, a 3-part documentary on one of our sporting heroes is not necessarily a sports documentary. It's the person being covered is a sporting hero, but your focus there is on the person and the individual. When you want to do a documentary, let's say an investigative one into boxing in South Africa and how The promoters are ripping off the young boxers, and I'm not saying that they are, just throwing it out there. Then obviously it's very sports-based. Somebody with the experience within the boxing fraternity would need to be brought in. Something like that, if it comes through, I send it directly to Ruby and Orapaleng. Ruby's the programming manager at Sports. So if you guys aren't sure, you just send it through as a documentary series. When we go through it, we evaluate it, we will then say this belongs with Sports, or it can be processed by ourselves.
So just to add to what Renee is saying as well, I mean, what we're trying to do is, because we take sporting codes like cricket, it would be also nice, and a lot of this skews to men, it would be nice as well to try and get wider audiences involved in the sporting code, and therefore to provide different genres rather than just live cricket, but something that supports it. And, you know, to role model, I think the Serena series did quite well for us, but I think that you could do, you know, I suppose that they're investigative ones that could be around things like Renee saying, they could also sit quite comfortably in the documentary slot on S3. But at the moment, we're looking for both sporting slots as well as history docu slots in prime time on S3. So sports docus that will really push numbers for us. I mean, if we looked at, if anyone saw how, I mean, I didn't look at it, but there was that sports documentary on rugby that had all men like watching and really loving rugby, and that kind of thing would really do well. But maybe it's in a different code. I mean, we don't.
We've got enough guys like that. Hey, Pat.
Yeah.
You're carrying a strand of international sports stars, but I mean, we've had some controversial figures in our time, and what's happened to them. There's Hansi, there was Kelly's boyfriend, the footballer. There's Oscar. The focus on all the Oscar documentaries have always been around Riva's perspective, but
yeah.
you know, so I just think that we've got a lot of interesting sports stars in South Africa that have led quite interesting lives that a very broad audience would be interested in, whether you like the sport or not.
Yeah. It's like Wade van der Kerk. We actually just licensed that docu on Wade's career. But there's also, you know, in the American baseball, there's a guy who started out here in Joburg and is now playing in the big league. You know, there's that story. There are a number of other stories like that too in the NBA. So it would be in the World Series. So,
even in
that,
yeah, we've got we've had many stars playing European leagues and the English league.
Yeah.
Where are they now?
Okay, thank you. So we had a question from Obit.
Hi.
Obit? Hi.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, in terms of when the commission briefs open around mid June, as you said. Are you looking as S3? Are you also going to be looking for 100% commission solicited? Are they going to be 100% solicited briefs? And if so, what type of shows probably are you looking for?
Can I
come in there before you speak, Pat? So before Pat gets put on the spot, at the moment we are not soliciting specific ideas. We call them RFPs, requests for proposals. So once we've done the round on this 554 unsolicited, whatever is the short and the gap, we will then start our process to issue out the solicited, which is the RFPs. because the minute we do that, we fall under a different procurement system, which is managed by our supply chain management department. And the rules are governed strictly by National Treasury. So we can't disclose to you upfront and say, we're looking for this and this and that that's going to come out to tender. When we are putting out our tenders, we will call the industry together and we'll engage them and give them an overview and a background of who the clients are, in this case 1, 2, or 3, what they need to look out for, who the audience is. We cannot, if we're going to tender, be sharing that information.
Okay, thank you so much. So you just deal with unsolicited programming. That's the proposals that will be open mid-June. And
yes, those will be the ones for then, mid-July. And then we'll be able to, yeah. What I don't want to, sorry, Obed?
Where do you submit exactly?
www.sabc.co.za/commissioning. But when you go onto the SABC website, you'll see there's a link that you click on for content. All the information is there. You see, you fill out the forms and you send it through to the commissioning at sabc.co.za.
Okay, and the turnaround time is?
For which? So that's why I would prefer if you go on there and have a look. We also sent through, when was it, Antoinette? A few weeks ago. I sent through a presentation on how we work. Pre-sales, as soon as you send it in, depending on when the people are available, we call a pitch. Pre-sales go directly to pitch. Oh, sorry, that's my phone. Pre-sales go directly to pitches. We don't do a paper evaluation. So how long it takes for the pitch normally depends on how long we can take to bring everybody together. But so far, our timelines have been within 4 months for that, for calling the pitch.
Commission?
Sorry?
For 100% commission?
Now, the 100% commission is subject to a whole range of factors. So let me tell you where I sit. I have got you guys in documentaries, so you would deal with factual. At the moment in factual, I've got 3 commissioning editors. I've got no head of factual. I've got 3 commissioning editors. That is my team, 3 commissioning editors in factual. Those 3 people have to manage the current content output that's going across the channels. As I'm sitting here now, they're valued at 99 million Rand that those 3 people are managing. Then they're also busy doing the open window in November. There were, I think the most submissions was to drama and the second most was to factual, which was nice for a change because normally it's drama and entertainment. Factual came in at 154. Those 3 people had to evaluate. I can't just take a proposal home and sit on my bed. I need to follow a SCM process. So when Tom, Dick, and Harry comes back to me in 4 years and says, stole his idea, I have proof that I didn't steal his idea. When we close, so let's say we've closed now, I evaluated. Out of that 554, I'm taking 160 into pitch. Out of the 160 into pitch, I'm taking 60 into commission. I'm going to produce it now. I'm going to take it into production. That services only 80% of the schedule. I've got 20% of the schedule outstanding. I'm going to issue RFPs now. I'm going to issue an RFP. Because I'm going to issue an RFP, I'm not going to open the unsolicited because I just don't have that amount of people to run the amazing paperwork and process that I have to do in the SABC. So by the middle of July, I'm either going to say, Guy, we haven't got supply chain management and National Treasury sign-off for us to issue tenders. We can't block the industry. Let's open it up for the 100% commissions. As soon as I do that, it's going to delay my tender for another 6 months. So these are the considerations we take in. The one benefit of it about doing a tender, which is solicited, is that the budget is approved, the schedule is approved. So as soon as we get it in and we process and you come for a pitch, the period between when you pitched and when you get your contract is much shorter than when you're doing it in unsolicited. Because in unsolicited, somebody's got to go Pat must find a slot, Pat must find budget. There's an entire different value chain. So obviously it's in our interest to put out solicited, but yeah, we've got governance challenges because unfortunately what we do is not goods and services. But that's for another day. I can't give you a timeline on unsolicited, right? I wish I could. But if we use the current timeline, November, it went out, the open window, end of November. By the middle of this June, I'm done with everything, pictures and everything. That's more or less the timeline. It could have been shorter if I didn't get so many proposals and if we didn't get people retrenched and engage in a new operating model.
And all that information is available on your website, as you said, the commissioning information.
Yeah.
Yep, you can go there. Our terms of trade is there, the submission forms, how to submit.
Even when you meet your tenders, they for solicited, they'll be available there.
Yes, all our tenders follow government. You can find it on government's e-portal. And you'll find it on ours. I normally also send through notices to SASFED and a whole range of organizations. If you're not registered on our database of it, please send an email to the commissioning office address, commissioning at sabc.co.za, and with your email address, your cell phone number, etc., we'll put you on the database. We send out SMSs and mass emails. When I issued the open window in November, I sent out 1,230 SMSs to tell people to go to the website we open.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I want to give Moagi Michael Matia an opportunity. He's been waiting some time, and then we've got a question from Lloyd Ross. But would you like to go ahead, Moagi? Your hand is raised.
Mute that thing. Hello, Pat.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi.
Oh yes, I hope you well and you look well. We thank the Lord. Pat, you spoke about an ROI. You spoke about shows need to make money. Like, how do you guys measure your ROI? Do you only measure it on audiences who watch the show, or are you guys considering or working on new innovative money-making ways with producers and the SABC?
No, I probably opened up a can of worms there.
You did.
I did. So I think what I was trying to describe is a delayed process in terms of being able to get approval for business plans, because we couldn't show a good return on investment. In other words, we didn't have enough advertorial spend on the channel. We didn't have enough numbers, audience people to sell to advertisers in order for them to come into the program. So what we have to do in order to make this work, so that we can also put documentaries there that don't necessarily, that speak to our positioning, but don't necessarily make a return on investment, we have to get the rest of the channel working, so that we can do that, that we have the option to do that kind of thing, where we're not going to make big numbers, but we do it because it's great positioning for the channel or great talkability. But we have to get to a space in which the environment is working sustainably in terms of revenue.
Oh, I see.
So
I see.
that's also that's
To make sure that I understand you, the SABC, you are still measuring the like ROI, actual money from audience participation, from audience viewership.
well, the ROI is really about how much we can make in a particular slot.
Okay.
So how
Alright.
how many, and mostly in terms of advertorial spend
Okay.
on the
Alright.
channel. I don't know if David or Renee want to come in here either.
Yeah, I mean, if I can come in, I think Pat kind of has answered this question. Sure, sorry, just excuse my dog there. But we still measure our ROI based on ARs that in turn should obviously lead to revenue. That's what it is. Now the SABC is not in a very good space, and worse, SABC3, as much as it's a public broadcast channel, it's the commercial arm. It's a PCS, as we all know. So the expectation for our expectations from our principals is that it needs to be commercially viable. So, we need to, as Pat says, we need to move to a place where the entire channel and the core slots that are commercial are profitable. That will allow us then to be able to motivate for mandate content that normally comes via documentary. But also just to say that it's an internal discussion that's ongoing on how we look at ROI as a public broadcaster. But the reality at the moment is that that discussion becomes difficult on our side when we know that the SABC doesn't have money. So our executives want to see an ROI, a monetary value ROI in all slots.
Okay, just one last quick one. Still on the money issue. Hypothetically and sometimes like factually, let's just say I've got a show. I've got like a documentary that is sponsored by someone. It's complete. I got paid and stuff. Is the SABC willing to take it without paying me back, or like, do you guys sell space? Would you sell an hour? Hello?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you just repeat that?
Okay, it's not gonna be as clear, but I'll try to make it as clear as possible. Because you've got the
Airtime.
Yes, you've got airtime, right? And you've got the unsolicited and solicited content. So I'm coming from a point where I'm saying there is a client or an advertiser who's paid for content, and I've got 30 minutes of it or an hour of it. It's documentary, it's paid for, it's made. Do you guys, how would one approach the SABC to actually get airtime?
Okay, so that's an advertiser-funded program, an AFP. Yes, so if you go to my website, www.sabc, you will find the forms there. So AFPs, pre-sales, anything that comes with funding, you don't need to wait for a window to be open. When you need me to fund everything in the production, you have to wait till we open the window. But what you are describing is an advertiser-funded program. You submit it through to us, and we view it. Remember, an advertiser-funded program normally from our side comes in as a proposal. But if you've got one that's completed, it's done, then you can submit it through via Violet, and they'll view it. I must state to you that the advertiser will be charged by the SABC for exposure.
Yes,
we do not, it's not going to be a free ride. The editorial will be made because we have to ensure that this is not one big advertorial. So it's not just one another clientele funeral plan for 24 minutes, that there's actually content, and the advertiser believed that that content supported its brand more than its product. And then you submit it if it's fully done. between David and Vi. They'll view it from an editorial perspective, and then they'll call in the CBM, SABC3's commercial brand
I
manager.
don't have anything on my side.
Hey? Oh, sorry, David. It's Tetso and Pat will then engage to see slot pricing, discounting, and work that out. So we've done it in the past.
So the pricing is not standard?
No. How can the pricing be standard, Moahi? There's each slot. Each slot is a different price. You don't go into Checkers and think you're going to pay the same for every item on the shelf at Checkers, Moahi. So it depends. Firstly, let me explain to you now. It depends on the slot, the time. Why does the slot and the time matter? Because it pulls in a different type of audience. If we're going to give you at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, the audience is much smaller, so the rate card is cheaper. If you're moving into prime time and you now want to come in at a 7 p.m. slot, there is greater orders for the advertiser. It's not clutter. That's how we normally sell it. So if you're thinking of selling an idea to an advertiser, the best way is to tell them they will exist without that clutter. The advertising space is very cluttered. Now they exist in an actual program, and they don't have to worry about the audience jumping up and going to make coffee or going to the loo while the ad is up, because they're watching it and they're consuming it. Also, because sales knows that the advertiser had spent to make the program, the T rate and the rate card is much cheaper than having to place an ad. So yeah, just you fill out your forms, you got an idea. Remember, if it's an AFP, guys, and you're looking for us to acquire it from you, you haven't made it, you need to submit a letter from your funder, your sponsor. And the reason I do that is because I need to make sure that there's a fair process for everybody. Yes. He can send me in a proposal and say he's got an advertiser. I love it. I process it. At the end, he's like, oops, they pulled out. Then I have to convert it into 100% commission. And yet there's 100 other producers who are waiting to come in on 100% commission.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Okay, great. Thank you. We are at time. What I want to do is I just want to ask one last question. So we've got a question from Lloyd Ross. When would one pitch a co-production? And I just want to tag another question onto that. We speak about 100% commissions. Pat, could you speak to the budgets and the budgetary caps that exist for those 100% commissions so that we understand the remit that we are working inside, or we understand the figures? What's available for 100% commission from the SABC3? Well, S3.
So that's a difficult question to answer. It will depend on what slot we're putting it in. It will depend on whether we think we can make back revenues on the project. And it will depend on what kind of documentary it is, knowing that, say, investigative might be, more money, or whether it's a 3-parter or a 48-minuter. So it's a difficult question to answer. And I
Sorry, Pat, I lost your sound. I'm not sure if that's the case for anyone else.
I think that it's a discussion that we still have to have in terms of, we have...
I can hear Pat. Yep, can hear you.
So we have a slot that is, say, 52 weeks, and we have a slot budget for that. And we're able to have, a base from which we move, and can make some higher than others dependent on our overall budget and what the project can do in terms of returns, and what the project costs. to make. It's not a big movement between that, but I can't give you, this is the absolute, you know, this is what we do.
And then to Lloyd's question, when
Renee, sorry, so can I just come ask Renee? Renee, I think that sort of is certainly S3's position, but I think we probably a little higher in terms of spend on dockies at the moment. What is your take?
Yeah, so we do have a baseline cost per minute, but the baseline cost per minute is also, it's subjective. It's subjective because what you're bringing to us is subjective. If you want to do a historical series on Shaka Zulu, I'm not going to expect that I'm going to give you 6,000 Rand a minute for that historical documentary series on Shaka, and then I'm going to give you somebody else 6,000 Rand for a documentary series on the best restaurants in South Africa. And if I do sit with that situation, that's when we'll then have a discussion with Pat and with David to say, you know what, perhaps we need to not do the best restaurants in South Africa and move that slot budget over to the historical one. So we can then up the baseline of 6,000 Rand a minute. So there are sacrifices. It's not a case of the swimming pool is bottomless. If we have to put more money onto one, we have to take it from somewhere else. And that's kind of the discussion Pat was having earlier. But for us, we're averaging about 6,500 Rand a minute for our standard, and I'm saying standard documentaries, the normal, that's not requiring tons of travel, CGI, archives, those kind of things that add on to the cost of a production.
Thank you for that. I've just got two more questions. So one is, again, sorry, from Lloyd, where and when would one pitch a co-production? And then I'll ask the last one and we should close then, I think.
I'm trying not to laugh, right? Yeah. So at the moment, because we have regulatory issues around co-productions, we are doing pre-sales. Some of our pre-sales, we've put in up to 30% of your production budget, which in effect could be, I guess, classified as a co-production, because remember, co-production is not necessarily a 50-50. At the moment, a classic legally termed co-production is a bit challenging. Well, it's been for the last, since we became an SOE, of 7 years or so. Yeah, about 6, 7 years. We haven't yet sorted out that governance issue. I did find a treasury note a month ago. They issue hundreds of them. I think I found treasury note 9,999. That might give us some flexibility around that. So as of now, co-production is not on the table. If you're looking for co-funding in the form of a pre-sale or a co-funding partnership, you can submit it through our normal process. If you go to our website, you'll find the submission forms. They say CF, which is co-funding, and they say PS, which is pre-sale. And you send me in your finance plan, your proposal, and how you plan to fund this and what you want from us. And we evaluate it like a co-funder or a pre-sale, not a co-production. And I think discussing the legalities of co-production is a whole nother meeting. But basically, if you want me to engage in an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, where we start taking ownership and asset, then that becomes state-owned, and I need to go through all the various state requirements. Yes, Pat?
I was just going to add at a simple level, if I can reduce what you were saying, is that basically if we try and do a co-production, it has to go through Treasury, right? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I just muted myself there. It has to go through, so let me just give you a nice picture, because Treasury sounds simple. Ops Committee, EXCO, PBS, PCS, Board Subcom, full board, board chairperson goes to Minister of Communications. Yeah. Minister of Communications approves it. It goes to Minister of Finance in Treasury. The Treasury evaluated and send it back to us, yes or no. They might say that actually why we're doing this, we need to go out to public tender. And they might say that the risk to the state asset is too great. Yeah, so it's fun. That's the levels I have to go through for a co-production with no guarantee.
And that's for any budget. It's called a co-production.
It's for R5 to 50 billion.
Okay, so Lloyd says that he thinks the pre-sale is fine. Thank you so much for outlining the process, and now we understand that that's really not on the table. So can I just ask a last question from Enver? Can we please get a commitment to timeframes for deliverables, i.e. if you've pitched successfully, what is the time frame to signing your contract? So I mean, is it a year? Is it 3 years? When do, if you have a successful pitch with the SABC, are you able to then see the contract, sign it, and also kick things off?
Oi.
I'll leave that one to David. Put David on the spot there.
Oh, but the head of operations. So, look, as Pat said earlier on, it's very hard now. What we're going to do, one of the things that we're going to do, and I think the agreement that we had from the GE was that by June, July, we would have reviewed and re-looked at our workflows and SOPs. So that exercise still needs to take place, to be quite honest. And once we've done that, part of that exercise, post Section 189, is to do exactly that, is to look at the current processes and try and, squish the timelines and try and turn, make sure that we can turn around certain content. Certainly when it comes to documentaries, if you prioritize content, obviously the first thing is licenses. That we should be turning around in a month or so, ideally, depending on the value, of course. As Renee explained, depending on depth, we have to go all the levels. But if we're talking a single documentary, it doesn't make sense why people need to wait for such a long time. And then when it comes to commissions, even when it comes to commissions, you start looking at the different types. So if someone has submitted a documentary and so on, subject to the provisions that would be put in place, as Renee explained, there will be certain times where you open, and there will be certain times so that we can manage the inflow and the output. So if we then have a specific time that we've said, we've opened, we can receive proposals, we can look at them, and we've given ourselves certain time within our SOPs, what becomes important is we then meet those deadlines in responding. But the other thing I think and maybe we're still going to discuss it later when we look at our workflows, we need to also be realistic and be able to communicate with the industry. If I've got 52 slots within a year and I've got a strategy and I want to fulfill and fill the strategy, if my 52 slots and maybe even 104 have been filled between the 2 years, sometimes we need to be honest and say to, anyone, the producers and the industry, that this is how far we are, and this is what we have outstanding, and this is what we require. And I suppose, hopefully, in future, with the website and so on, there'll be that sort of communication so that it's quite clear where we are. And as a producer, you can make a decision. Because if we've already got 52 documentaries, you know, and we're doing strategy and we're reviewing and we're looking at certain content, the reality is it might be that the response will take longer because we might have to wait to go through a strategy session to confirm that indeed, you know, this is the slot that's still going to remain before we engage. So it's just that transparency as well, I think, in future that's required, because, you know, in truth, there are times when we can't make decisions because we have to go through 3-month strategy or 4-month strategy process, confirm, and at that time, there's an expectation for responses and so on. And you might find that, you know, those responses are not coming as expected, or, you know, in the time that's been expected. But I think, in short, we should be able, and I'm sure these engagements will continue after this, but we should, after we've completed and we've reviewed our process, we should be able to come back and say, and maybe also have some sort of workflow that we put on the website that says these are the timelines moving forward with the new structure that we have in place.
Thank you.
So Nate, can I just wrap up quick there as to what David was saying? David is correct. All of that's taking place. If any of you are part of the IPO, you would note that the terms of trade was supposed to have been reviewed last year, beginning. But we're just finalizing the move of our processes to our procurement department. Once those are done, I will review and revise the terms of trade, which will contain the timelines, and submit it through for discussion through to, I normally do it via SASFED and their members. And you guys are member of SASFED, hey. So it will come through and then we'll meet and discuss the timelines that's on there. It should be in the next 2 months that supply chain finalizes it. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just, I think in closing, I just want to say thanks very much to Renee, who's been here since the very beginning of these engagement sessions, which we started. We've been having them every second week over, I guess, 8 weeks. So thanks to you, Renee, for your time, and to David as well. I think really useful information shared here. And I think just from our side, you know, we have been with the SABC for many years, right? So many of the producers here have been really servicing the SABC for over a decade, maybe more. And so I just want to acknowledge also the industry's commitment to see the public broadcaster flourish. And so thank you, you know, for the efforts that you are making. And you know, I think we are a little bit disheartened in a way because things are kind of at the place that they are at now. But we trust that with yourselves who are committed to kind of reorientating the SABC now that so much change has happened, will continue to do so. So thanks to you for your efforts as well. And yeah, I guess we hold each other's hand in this whole process, because without us, also the SABC won't be with quality South African content. So with that, everybody, thanks to Pat from S3, to Violet, who's also here, David, Renee, and to everybody else on the call, all of our members. Happy to announce that the next engagement like this will be with Netflix. It'll happen during Encounters. We still to confirm, but they would have been at a docCHAT session anyway. We're just trying to merge that with Encounters, so we'll see what they have to say. We also will invite Showmax and yeah, and we'll continue to try and bring broadcasters here to our Zoom room. So thanks, everybody. Thank you for your time. Go well. Have a lovely weekend. Watch the replay on YouTube. And otherwise, email us. You have our email address.
Thanks, Antoinette.